Hi, and welcome to Futurology. I'm Dawn Nakagawa, the president of the Berggruen Institute, and I'm here today with Grant Slater, the producer of Futurology,
Hi, Dawn.
to talk about Jaron Lanier. So, Grant.
Yes.
Tell us about Jaron.
Yeah, Jaron is a very interesting fellow. He's a creature of Silicon Valley, but also not a creature of Silicon Valley.
Ooh, how so?
I mean, he plays a kind of inside-outside game. So while he has worked at all these Silicon Valley companies, including working at Microsoft right now, one of the companies that's putting the most money into artificial intelligence, which is kind of the flavor of the month in Silicon Valley, or maybe the decade, or maybe the century. One of his main claims to fame is that he is the inventor of virtual reality, the term and the thing. And this is probably not an apocryphal story, because back in the late 80s, he was the first person to think about and build a set of goggles that you could strap to your head and see a world that wasn't your own. And 20 or 30 years before the real thing came around, he called this invention the iPhone, EYE. As in IC. But I think today he could best be described as a philosopher of technology.
We're big believers at the Futurology podcast and at the Berggruen Institute that philosophy in this day and age needs to be an applied sport, so to speak. It needs to be one where we're experimenting in order to discover new ideas and new concepts. And a lot of the work that we do here at the Institute is about figuring out what is our conceptual future.
I actually wanted to interview Jaron Lanier because of this book I read of his about 10 years ago that was very influential on me. The book was called Who Owns the Future? And it was about how we could all survive in a world without work. In a world where AIs and our machines did everything for us. How are we going to get paid? How are we going to live? How are we going to maintain our agency and our dignity?
Interesting. So he's not a tech utopianist.
Yeah, definitely not. He has a more realistic view that is tinged by total weirdness.
Total weirdness. Does that come, because I understand he's also a pretty prolific musician.
Yeah.
Do you think that weirdness comes from being an artist?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some of that. This is one of the reasons he caught my eye, and this is one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk to him for this podcast, is because he's a musician and there's a lot of changes. I think this is one of the places where there's a lot of things roiling in this era on two fronts. You know, sort of on the economic front, you have people who are artists on Spotify getting paid fractions of a cent for their songs to be streamed by people, which is not allowing them to have a sustainable life as an artist. And then on the other side, maybe even possibly worse, you have AI starting to create music. So actually you see a lot of this on Spotify. They will sort of pick a vibe and start putting out AI music, like a chill shoegaze trance, and they will start to replace artists that are actually doing that. So the artists are kind of getting hit from these two angles. And this is what I wanted to talk to him about. How do we survive in a world without work?
I think there are few questions that in this moment are more important. Just early indicators are saying that young people are having trouble finding a foothold, in the world of work. How does he think we can solve this problem?
Yeah, so the fundamental basis of his idea is that the platforms that we use would be nothing without us. So the billions, trillions of dollars of capitalization that they have would not happen without us, and therefore we should benefit. If you are getting something for free, then you are the product.
Well, I look forward to exploring these ideas further in the interview. So now let's turn to the interview with Grant Slater and Jaron Lanier on Futurology.
I do want to start at the beginning, if we can. I'm wondering if you could tell us about when you started playing music.
Yeah, well, when I was quite young, my mom taught me to play music. She was a Holocaust survivor, but as a young girl, she performed publicly in Vienna as a pianist. And she survived the war, made it to the US, and really wanted me to play the piano. And so I remember her hands on my hands. And, she died in a car accident when I was still small. And so for me, this sort of out of control obsession I have with musical instruments and learning new ones is, of course, all about my mom on to some, on some level. I played the piano. I used to play kind of very gooey, exaggerated, overly emotional versions of things like the Beethoven sonatas for her. And after she died, I started developing a piano style that's unusual. Used to be very aggressive, is a little less so now. But I also just became obsessed with learning new instruments and just constantly am trying to learn some new instrument. And it's gotten hard at this point because I've run out. There are a lot of them, but there aren't that many, really, if you have my problem. But I just am obsessed with learning instruments. I think it's less expensive than a heroin habit. That's not entirely clear. It's definitely less dangerous to one's health, although it's not entirely healthy, it must be said. And I also, of course, play with people, and I love performing. And I've had a unusual musical career in that I really do play across genres. I'll play with heavy metal people or classical people or all kinds of people, but I think I feel the most myself when I'm playing some weird instrument.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could talk, you said you like learning a new instrument. What are the cognitive and emotional uppers that you get?
Oh, I mean, I think the secret to life is finding survivable addictions that don't hurt anybody, right? And so whatever it is, you need that to live well, I think. And the instrument one, I think part of it, there's so many levels. I mean, one part of it is how physical it is. I think there's a fascination that people sometimes have with a very beautiful device that you use with great precision and intimacy. And I think that might be true, for instance, for a beautifully crafted bow and arrow. It might be true with a beautifully crafted sports car to a degree, but I don't think there's anything as much like that as a good musical instrument. They are just so refined. They're so refined that the really good ones are a little beyond our engineering understanding. And there's this level of intuition and luck in many cases involved in their existence. And I also love the optimism that's implicit in instruments. And the way that works is obviously the human experience has changed over the years. And the principal thing that changes, it's not the only thing, but the principal thing that changes is probably technology, or the core thing. And so the trope that you always hear is technology is driven by warfare. Is it? See, I think sometimes it is. But with musical instruments, we have some great examples of exactly the opposite. I mean, we learned to cast bells for sound before they were turned up to be cannons, which then turned into guns. But it started as an instrument. Nobody was around in the earliest days of bows, but it seems plausible that the bow was used for sound before you put an arrow on it, because typically the way things evolve is with a smaller number of parts to a larger number of parts. So it's a logical surmise. But another example that I'm very fond of is this place, Silicon Valley, was largely pioneered by one company, which was called Hewlett-Packard. And out of the example of Hewlett-Packard sprouted this whole crazy place. So what was Hewlett-Packard's first product?
I have absolutely no idea.
The very first thing they sold was a music synthesizer to Walt Disney that was used in the movie Fantasia.
What a fact.
But the thing is, like the arts, and particularly music, are so core to technical culture. Steve Jobs bought a Bosendorfer for the Mac team because they all played piano. And I remember when that thing arrived, and it's still there. It's still in Cupertino. Not as well maintained. Tim, get your act together on that Bosendorfer. But at any rate, there's this current of music flowing through Silicon Valley, and there always has been. So I don't think it's true that technology is more like a musical instrument than like a weapon. It's like both aspects have always been around.
I want to talk a little bit about your album. The one album I'm thinking of came out in 1994.
Yeah, so I I've always had a really uneasy relationship with the music business, and I did do one album. That was the one with Philip Glass on Polygram. It did okay, actually, I guess. It was called Instruments of Change. I haven't heard it in a really long time, and I'm a little surprised to even know about it because a lot of that world has just vanished. But yeah.
I listened to it today or yesterday.
Okay.
There was a lot of piano music. There was like a sax quintet.
The sax thing. I remember that.
Yeah.
It's actually 6 of them. It's not 5. It's six saxophones.
Uh-huh.
That was a piece I wrote that could really be for any 6 similar instruments. And I used to play a lot with Philip Glass. In fact, even very recently, we were doing concerts together before the pandemic.
And who is Philip Glass? Just for people who might not.
Philip Glass is a composer who is considered very well known, and people probably should be aware of him, but I guess who knows these days. And he is associated with a style called minimalism, which is so influential that in a way it's almost not really a distinct style anymore. It's just embedded in everything, every soundtrack, everything. And yeah, there's that 6 saxophone piece, and there's what else is on it? I don't really remember that record. It's been a really long time, but every once in a while I'll hear it. It's a funny thing. Like I've heard it show up in movies and stuff, and I kind of wonder, wait, that sounds like me. Oh yeah, it's that thing. And then I don't know if they got permission, or I have like no idea these days. We live in a world of perfect and perfectly bad information at once, don't we?
Yeah, it sounds like you need royalties, but we're going to talk about that later. So I've got some liner notes from your album there.
Oh my God.
I really liked them.
Wow, this will be a trip. I have no memory of what this would be. Yeah,
I can read it back to you. It's actually kind of on the point of what we're talking about.
Okay.
When it goes back to to instruments, what you're talking about, instruments. So why acoustic music then? Ultimately, this is a mystery. I have only very rarely found as profound a level of experience in high-tech music. For whatever reason, I do have a theory, though. Computer-based musical instruments must be built out of concepts of what music is. In contrast, a piano doesn't know what a note is. It just vibrates when struck. So it goes on to say that digital music can lead to bland or nerdy art.
Okay, well, this all sounds like me for sure.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, music as a technology in that context. How far back would we need to go to find the beginnings of music?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's flutes attributed to Neanderthals that have been found, and the oldest flute that's a Neanderthal one actually lives in a drawer in Queens, New York, weirdly. But I've played a cast of it. In fact, I have a cast of it at home, and it does seem to play in tune. It seems like they were not just doing noise effects, but really were probably doing melodies. And, presumably there are other sorts of struck things, maybe, log drums or even skins and bows, as I mentioned before, that are probably much, much older. But
presumably people were singing before that. Maybe. I don't know.
Animals seem to, so presumably people did. Yeah. No, this is a wonderful, if you can say that a bit of optimism about Silicon Valley is that its first product was a musical instrument, not a weapon. One can also notice that humans have been making music technology for as long as other technologies that you might think would be higher priority, like for agriculture or warfare or medicine, like we actually have really prioritized this crazy thing. And I'm sure you're aware of the many theories about why that would be from a kind of a practical point of view, that it's something about how brains coordinate and, all these theories, some of which are probably correct to some degree, but there's obviously, to me at least, something beyond that it's not, it's a statement that human identity is not merely practical, that there's something in us that reaches beyond the merely useful. And I don't want to nerdify that too much. I know the drill. I can do it. I can come up with a way. I can tell you all about how computation of many kinds improves if there's noise, and maybe the noise art is a kind of noise that tunnels ahead of practicality that in a larger frame is still practical. I can do all that, and
but
that's all fine. But I don't think that that's quite the right way to think. And so this actually brings up another point, which is a very core idea for me that informs everything I do, which is, let's compare a few different sorts of things you might do. Let's say you're doing pure science. You can do pure science basic research without necessarily thinking about what it's for or who it's for. You might not prioritize it ideally without thinking that way, but you can certainly do it. You can certainly do pure math without knowing who it's for. But when we come to engineering, if you don't know who it's for, I don't think it's defined. In order to do engineering, it has to be for a beneficiary, because otherwise it's just random. Like, what if you don't know who it's for, how can you evaluate whether the engineering is good or not?
You can't build something for building its sake.
Well, I mean, you can, but that's art.
Gotcha. Is music a spiritual technology? I mean, I think just by its function, I think of mantras. I think of, rhythms or sort of like trance states.
I think music is flexible. So I think musical instruments have to be spiritual because they're technology, and technology has to be, or it's absurd. Music is human expression, and humans are just all over the place. Every time you think you've boxed in humans, they break the box, which is part of why I treat them in a faith-based way. But certainly there are extremely nerdy musicians out there who absolutely resist any little tiny drop of spiritual or icky sentimental feeling in the way they act or think. I've certainly run into plenty of them. I'm not sure if they can succeed in really excluding that stuff completely, but they come close. There are plenty of them, and a lot of them are commercial and influential.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at here is sort of the point you made earlier about sort of music pushing ahead in history in advance of other things. I think religions come with music that accompanies them, oftentimes chanting, Tibetan Buddhism, like these things, the sound, the sound that precedes everything. Sometimes people say like sound was the first thing. There are cosmologies that say that. So I'm wondering if music is a spiritual technology in this way.
Our current theories of cosmology more or less say sound is the first thing, that you start with fluctuations that turn into, quantum fields, and here we are, that. So
can you say more about that? I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, the current physics we're working with that seems to test out the best is very similar to music. It's all about resonances and ratios and all. I mean, I think anyone who's really familiar with music who gets into modern physics will notice a lot in common. Obviously it gets pretty tricky and complicated in our current physics, but, it's basically the same kind of thing. It's like resonances, but just of spectacular symmetries that are not the ones we're familiar with in our three-dimensional world and our normal instruments. But I like the spiritual sensibility for music. I love it. I love the notion that when you play music, you're sort of, let's say you can think of pure music without words, let's say, without not the lyrics, but just the music part. You can think of it as form without content. Now, of course, it sometimes has content because there'll be some melody that's referenced to some other melody or whatever. And I'm not saying it's not strictly without content, but it's got a bias towards form without content. And just interacting with form in that way is very close, I think, to interacting with something very pure about reality that isn't even elaborated into particular organisms or particular solar systems or particulars. It's like really cutting down to just the how flow flows in this weird little reality that we've all entered. And music does that. When you were reading my old liner notes, something I apparently said back then was that a piano doesn't know what a note is, right? But a synthesizer there has to be some explicit representation for it to do something. Although, can I have permission to contradict myself endlessly?
Always, Jaron. Always.
We are entering into a more statistical era of computer science, which is one way to define what this AI thing is. And so we might be getting away from that a bit. Like if we're getting to a point where you have musical instruments that emerge out of very large model algorithms that are very statistical, we might have a digital thing that's less based on an explicit representation. So I don't think we're quite there yet. I think some of us pretend we're there. We're not quite there, but that's possible, certainly. But I do think the era of technological music making and art making that we've been in since Turing, let's say, does have this kind of chunky, sterile quality to it. And I can't prove that, but oh, come on. Everybody knows it's true. And so, like, what is that thing? And I think what that is this explicit layer of definition for something where the whole point is to not have that.
It seemed to me it's like a little more grid-like. It's like if you then I think computers make us want to be on that grid. I go back to something that you said earlier. You said content is form and form is content, which is interesting. I mean, I think when I think about music, I think of like sort of the space between the notes.
This is an idea that's very ancient that comes out again and again and again. And one of my teachers was Ali Akbar Khan, the great sarod player, and he that's what he used to say, is the music is what happens between the notes. It's never the notes. And that's very true in that genre, in Indian raga, that, because you just like these little bends. And so there's this form between the notes that people practice over and over for years, something I never achieved, but it's not, the notes are very explicit. I mean, they have a system of, it's a Sanskrit is like a grid.
Well, also the rhythm's very like explicit. So it's like has to be.
Sanskrit culture is like super grid-like where everything's organized, but then there's exactly the opposite of it in between all the points on the grid, right? And it's a wonderful, amazing thing. But what I think happened with music, so I don't want to say, all modern music is bad and the kids are all wrong, because I don't feel that. I hear stuff that's made in, is made in a DAW and with loops and everything once in a while that I think is just amazing. I feel like the way I heard hip hop in the early days was you have this rigid beat that's more rigid than any other music that had ever existed before. And then you have this person who's rapping, and the rapper is talking about liberation, and the rapper is talking about anger, and the rapper is maybe caught in some weird criminal web and all this horrible stuff. And the rapper might be mean, or the rapper might
wish he was a little bit taller.
Okay. But see, I always thought that the early hip hop used the drum machine as bars in a cell. It was almost like the rapper's in the cell, and then the beat is like this rigid thing that had never been there before, and they're banging their head against that, and the whole thing just like works crazy well, right? And so I don't think it's that anymore. I think at this point, after all these decades, it's smoothed into just normalcy, right? And I'm kind of curious where this will all go. I have a feeling that future generations are going to rediscover more fluid, organic rhythms. But I'll tell you one thing that's extremely important to me is to play music sometimes without the recorder on. I think it's extremely important just to play to the universe sometime and let the information be lost. I mean, according to some mainstream sensibilities about physics, it's not really lost. It's still kind of weaving its way through there. It's conserved, but it would be much too expensive to recover it. So it's effectively lost. And so you have to, I think, just play to the universe and let it go out there and not be recoverable. And I think it's in a way the only way for you yourself to hear the universe, to be in touch with it. You have to not record in our petty little human level all the time. You have to transcend it by letting the information just go out there.
Yeah, to me that sounds pretty woo-woo.
Well, I mean, we are in Northern California after all. Yeah. No, I mean, I guess I sound a little new age, but I think I'm actually speaking from a place that's pretty technically informed and pretty logical at the end of the day. It's just the problem is that when you think technically, when you try to make a lot of sense and have reasons for everything, you do end up sometimes undermining the whole purpose and motivation and sensibility that you started with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like logic has a way sometimes of overwhelming its own motivation. Artists have to make a living. And if we look at it historically, how did artists make a living prior to reproducing technologies like the player piano and then the wax from, cylinder? How did they do it? Well, there weren't too many ways. You could play in a king's court, you could play in a church, you could play in a whorehouse, or you could play for a military, maybe at a wedding once in a while. That's it. We're done. I mean, there wasn't really a lot. And all of those niches have their problems, And if you look at the history of musicians in all cultures, it was never easy and it was never comfortable. I think this idea of musicians just learning how to get by, the idea that the musicians union gained enough power to get Congress to pass the Mechanicals Act, where you'd get a royalty every time your music was stamped mechanically onto a medium, is amazing. An amazing moment in human culture where artists were able to do that. Why did we let this idea? There's no information without physicality. There is no information without moving charges or atoms around. It's like it's physical. And so we have this new idea after the internet took off, driven by tech culture and tech companies, that if you store music in bits, that's not mechanical anymore, which is bullshit physics. But we lost that thing, and it's a misunderstanding of the relationship of information and physics. But I guess that's how it is out there. So
this is what happens when you really make music a technology.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that there should be this opportunity to play music that isn't popular, I think, to some extent. And I think that, Fluxism, for example, is one of these things, and it's because it can be difficult to listen to or difficult to watch or difficult to understand, because maybe even more than music. I think with music, we kind of have this idea that it is communicating something to us through either its vertical, like so a feeling, or like even a story like Peter and the Wolf or something. Like we can hear this sort of like thing, but the plot is harder to find in Fluxist music because it's a lot of silence or whatever.
Yeah, been there. I've done that. Yeah. But here's the thing. Nothing's perfect. And so the downside of experimentalism is snobbery. And so you can have these people who are listening to this really unusual music who are just sure that they kind of are a little smarter or more keyed in than all those other people listening to Taylor Swift or something. They probably are, actually. But the thing is, when you start to have niche avant-gardism, you do tend to have an excess of ego. Not as bad as the excess of ego at the tippy top of wealth in the tech industry and some other places that I could mention. So it's not like the worst example of that in the world, but it is a thing. And so I think it's important to not get too comparative, and intrinsically, if you're saying, well, we're this esoteric thing, you're comparing yourself to whatever it isn't. And I think it's nice to have a lot of variety and a lot of different things, and to not be too judgmental, except in cases where you kind of have to be, which does happen. And I don't know, like personally, just my personal thing is I did the avant-garde thing. I did it with the masters. I did it with the people who were like the core of it. And I love that. I'm into it. But you know what I love more is just getting out there and really reaching an audience and getting their attention and just like giving them a little dose of beauty that they weren't expecting. And just like when you can do that, and it's not ever a guarantee, but if you can just be ravishing for a second and get it across, I just love that. And I find it a lot easier to do it with acoustic instruments, not exclusively. I've done some stuff with digital here and there. And I think once in a while that can happen, but I can do it much more with the acoustic ones. And I just love it. I love doing that.
Yeah. In defense of Fluxism, I will say,
I'm not.
I will say that, because of the way that it's challenging to listen to, you're kind of looking into it and like straining harder for the meaning. And like, in that way, I think it is closer to some form of like non-symbolic communication
okay.
than like other types of,
So for those listening, there's this idea that I used to talk about a great deal in the 80s, the first decade of commercial virtual reality, when I had the first startup and we were selling this stuff. Yes, kids, it goes back further than the Oculus by some decades. But anyway,
I remember there was like the Nintendo, they had a virtual reality goggles.
Sony had an early one that was just all red and vectors, and
The Virtual
Nintendo
Boy.
had a virtual reality glove for picking up 3D things.
Oh.
We did that. That
You
was for
did
my
that,
company.
yeah.
That was
Yeah,
called
you made
the Power Glove.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is really hitting my like age niche.
We did the Power Glove, and I can tell you
So
many
cool.
Power Glove stories whenever that might come up. But it was popular. I mean, that people like that. That was an 80s VR thing. That was like VR was a big thing in the 80s. It was like a present. But people, I mean,
And just
part
so,
of
just
tech,
so people know, we'll have said it. You're the OG VR guy.
Yeah, I guess I'm the OG VR guy. I made up the term VR and also mixed, if anybody's counting, and some other. But anyway, whatever.
Mixed reality. And
I can send you a picture of the commercial headsets, which were very expensive and esoteric, from the early 80s. And if you put the Apple Vision Pro, which sadly hasn't really caught on, but if you put them next to each other, you'll see they have the same shape and outline, which I think Johnny did on purpose, but I'm not sure. But they look the same, and it's
also
kind of cool.
Let's just mention that the one that you made was called the iPhone.
Yeah, the iPhone.
That was like what it was called. It was called
iPhone, but EYE. And Jobs always wanted Apple to get into VR headsets someday, and the I era was in part, I don't think it was solely, because the iPod came in maybe named, but the iPhone was in part connected to the original EYE iPhone, but who cares? So during the 80s, when VR was brand new and a thing, I had this notion that if you could improvise the content of reality, if you could just somehow with your hands or maybe by prompting these days, because we do prompt-based AI stuff, you could just generate AI spontaneously as you're going through it and make all kinds of worlds for other people. Even if you had to use some degree of symbolism to create in virtual reality, the thing that they would experience would just be the shared reality. And in a way, there's something about that that's different from just talking and sending words to somebody or sending recognizable images. There's something about it that feels to me to be a layer more basic and less symbolic. So that was called post-symbolic communication.
So it doesn't have to go through like the logic center of your brain.
There have been some studies of putting people in weird virtual realities while they're in an fMRI or something, and I think it's not conclusive. But the thing is, if you let's say I just blindfold you and I drop you in some weird environment you've never seen before, you might not have the words to describe it. That's what strangeness is, you know? So if you're in some strange, I suddenly drop you in some really weird ecosystem you've never seen before, you're perceiving it in a way more directly because you don't have the categories in advance. You have to kind of figure it out as you go. And so in an exotic virtual world that's being spontaneously created, people could do a spontaneous version of creating that experience for one another. That's post-symbolic communication. At the time, it was talked about by various people, and there's an argument that it really isn't anything different, and there's an argument that it really is. I don't know. You know, I think we'll actually experience it. In my own research, I've been working with my research interns for the last few years to do a bit of it, where you use our modern abilities with prompt AI to prompt stuff in the world into existence spontaneously as you're going through it, and or to do it jointly with other people, and you're all just prompting and stuff comes up. And that experience of just being able to go into a virtual world and ask for stuff and say,
it's like a prompt battle, like a rap battle, but like,
I never formulated it as a battle, but that certainly could be done. But what you can do is you can go in and say, I'd like to be in a cave, but the cave's walls are transparent. And I'd like to have all kinds of flying and swimming things visible through the walls all around me. And I want the cave to be in motion as if it were an internal organ, maybe inside me. So I'm inside myself. Oh, now here's somebody else. And like, they're going to be in this thing.
Okay. So, and then you don't need to talk about it because you're both experiencing it at the same time.
Right. And then it's beyond talking about, because it's just really weird at that point. Now, it doesn't always work, because as anyone who's used prompt-based, generative AI will tell you, it's not always going to work. It's like, why don't you understand me when I say this?
Well,
no, it's statistical. It's a statistical thing, and it's based on what other people had said about things in the past and interpolating
Yeah, there's no there,
And
right?
so,
No ghost in the machine.
right. But so it doesn't always work, but we've started to get the first sort of clunky experiences that are a little like post-symbolic communication. So presumably this path will continue, and speculating about what something will be like or what it will mean before it's experienced is, obviously very preliminary. And when speaking of experience is king, right? So,
yeah. I mean, I think just thinking about this like post-symbolic communication, we were talking about it in the context of music. So music does have this ability, like VR, to talk to you without talking to you.
My take on music is that you can experience it as form without content, or at least, without symbolic content. It's different from post-symbolic communication just in that symbolic communication gives you the spontaneity with content. I mean, I used to have, it's funny, I haven't talked about this in decades. This is really old stuff, but it would be like a cross between improvised music and aspects of language. And it's a little bit like a waking state dream that's social and intentional. And it's a little bit like, it's a mix of qualities of different experiences that is different from any of the ones that you might compare it to. Maybe it'll start to happen now. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I studied Russian literature and stuff in college, and I remember there was this group of folks called the Futurists, the Futurist poets. So it's like Mayakovsky.
Absolutely.
Vladimir Mayakovsky. I lived in Moscow for a while, and I would walk from my house to the subway, and there was like a big statue of him like on the square right by my house. So I would look at his very severe face every day when I was like walking through the snow and the rain and be like,
That sounds very Moscow.
Yeah, Moscow's gonna Moscow. But the futurist poets, they invented this nonsensical language called Zaum. They were trying to get past this idea that if you said words, it was going to block you from truly feeling it. And so they made it this fake language. So Zaum means Zaumni, which means like beyond sense or trans sense or beyond the mind, maybe. So I think that's a very pure example of it for me, because you're using the thing that we would usually use to communicate, but you're not communicating with it, but you want somebody to feel something.
Yeah, you're noticing the aspect of it that isn't parsable, that's always there. It has to be there. You can't completely get rid of it. There's a whole Moscow angle on early virtual reality, which is one of the possible starting points for virtual reality, if you want, is Leon Theremin, and who did a musical instrument where you just move your hand in the air.
That's sweet.
And I actually got to know both him and the great virtuoso who'd been his partner, Clara Rockmore, when they were alive. Do you want to hear some crazy stories? Or
absolutely.
All right. So there was some of the thinking that's a little like virtual reality stuff was really in the air in before the revolution in Moscow, and then in the initial part before it became absolutely horrendous, right? And there was a guy named Alexander Scriabin, who's a composer who had a very strong synesthesia, meaning that he had confusions between or bridges between different sense organs and heard notes as colors and all of this. And one of my very favorite composers, especially his last works, Vers la Flamme, like crazy good.
Check it out, guys.
Yeah. But anyway, there was a circle of people interested in these things, and Theremin and this crazy conductor musician named Nicholas Lanemsky and this guy and a few others were all kind of in a circle. And so Theremin made this device, and he thought it was like, this is the craziness of tech. It goes all the way back then. Oh, you only have to move your hands. So it'll be the easiest instrument to play, and everybody will be a musician. You don't have to learn all this stuff on the piano anymore.
So you move your hand and it goes, wee.
Yeah, but of course it's actually the hardest instrument to play, because controlling it requires incredible discipline. I mean, like
just like meditation level, just like little minute
tiniest. It's like very hard to play it in tune, and it's very hard to play it well, and it's very hard to but his partner at the time, they were married, I think Clara Rockmore was a violinist who I think had a hand injury, and she mastered it. She could make an audience cry with this thing. It was just incredible. So anyway, he licensed it to the big consumer tech company of the day, RCA, right? Which would be like Google now or something. And they made a batch and tried to sell them, and nobody could play it, of course. It was like a fiasco. It's a man after my own heart. Like, what a great way to fail. But anyway, he moved to the West to try to sell these things. And then the revolution went really sour and horrible. And there are many horrible stories. A particular thing was Scriabin had a young son who everyone thought was going to be the great future of music, and he was killed in the, it was in the violence of that time. So it was very hard. Anyway, I got to know both Slonimsky and Theremin, partially because I just wanted to talk to people who really knew Scriabin and get some feeling for him, because I've been obsessed with him as a composer. Anyway, all right. So Theremin just totally disappeared. What happened was he took up with a prima ballerina from Cuba, and he was in Cuba, and Stalin kidnapped him to make spy gadgets for the KGB. So he was kidnapped back to Russia and then just disappeared. Nobody knew about him. Then some people at Stanford discovered him when he was quite old and brought him back, which was incredible. But anyway, let us first wind back to the 70s. I'm a teenager. I'm hitchhiking in upstate New York. And one of these old sort of station wagons, which was a thing before SUVs, and they had wood panels on the side.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird. There was like a car with wood. But anyway, this car stopped to pick me up. And it was this woman who was, I would say, later middle-aged probably. And she's, well, young man, what do you do? And I said, well, I do, math and computer science in it, but I'm mostly a musician. I said, oh, that's lovely. I am also a musician. Have you ever heard of an instrument called the Theremin? I said, well, yeah, I've been building them since I was 9. Of course. I said, oh, that is lovely, young man. And I graduated. This is Clara Rockmore. I was picked up by fucking Clara Rockmore. And so the problem, Clara had the finest hand control probably of any human who ever lived. And if you've ever play a theremin and listen to her recordings, and you won't believe it. You'll think it's like, how did somebody do that? But she did. I saw her. Like, it was amazing. But the thing is, controlling a car, not her thing. So she's weaving all over the world. She scared the hell out of me. And I said, it's so lovely to meet you, but I really need to this is where I need to, you can leave me off here. Said, oh, are you sure, son? I thought you said you were going all the way to New York City. And they're like, no, this is great. All right. So anyway, much later, I meet Leon and I get to know him. And I got to give Leon Theremin a VR demo.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
It all comes full circle.
He was like vibrating. Like it was like, he was like so excited because of course this is what he dreamed of. In the first decade of the 20th century, and here this was probably in the 90s, and oh my God, it was amazing. But anyway, I told him, Clara picked me up hitchhiking when I was a teenager in upstate New York, and he looked at me in heart. You got in a car with that woman?
Jaron. Oh my gosh. So I've had to I've researched you for this podcast, and that has led me to listen to a lot of your stories. They all seem to involve running into somebody while hitchhiking, or you have this divine timing aspect to you where you just see, this is California woo-woo stuff, synchronicity. You seem to cross paths with people a lot. Not that I'm a synchronicity person, but
okay,
to the extent that I have heard anybody who had it.
Well, the thing, I think divine coincidences happen all the time. You just have to notice them.
Yeah. Synchronicity is a function of awareness, not a function of magic.
Right.
So it's what you notice.
That's good. Excellent.
I guess where we're heading is AI and music. I think that's where because that's where I don't know what you're going to say.
Oh, okay.
But before we get there, I just want to establish a few things. So I think I want to first talk about consciousness a little bit. This is the stupidest question ever, but it's the best question ever. What is consciousness?
Well, it's a good thing you asked me because I know.
All right.
I can tell you, I've got the definitive answer. You will never have to ask this again. We have reached the conclusion that you are looking for.
Then the right place has come to me.
Okay, so next question.
Oh man. Then what about why are AIs not conscious?
Oh, okay. Well, I can answer that one.
But in order to do that, you have to tell me what consciousness is.
No, I don't.
Okay, fine.
If consciousness is anything, it's not easily contained or defined, right? Because as soon as it is, it's not it kind of isn't there. So ultimately, consciousness is another one of those things, or it's really the same thing I was talking about before in the definition of technology. It's a matter of faith. I think we can certainly observe thoughts happening in organisms, even in people. So thinking isn't consciousness. It's the experience of thinking. It's not consciousness exactly. It's experience. And experience is only verifiable by the experiencer, obviously. But it's a matter of faith. I mean, you could decide, well, if I see thoughts in some kind of brain scan and I'm done. I don't have to believe there's any other thing that we're going to call consciousness. That's just some mysterious
so like
extra
Daniel
thing.
Dennett, just like all the parts come together and there's nothing.
Daniel Dennett would say that.
It is like there's nothing to like be that.
I used to have fun with Daniel Dennett debating in public for money. I kind of miss those days.
Oh man, I thought it was going to be another. Okay.
Or like Dawkins or something like that. I used to be a good double act with people like that where we'd kind of fight in public, and that was good entertainment. But anyway, so look. A few things about consciousness. Consciousness, one definition of it is it's precisely the thing that isn't reduced if it's an illusion, and it's the only thing like that. And so it's elective. You're not forced to believe in it.
But you would have to have the experience of not being forced to believe it.
I used to have this joke where I would say, usually with people, you can't tell if their consciousness inside or not. It's just a matter of faith that I believe you have consciousness inside the way I feel it.
Yeah.
The difference is with certain professional philosophers who profess that they don't, and so I'll believe them. So that would make Dennett some kind of weird bioautomaton where the consciousness got dislodged somehow or just didn't happen.
Yeah, this is like this is theory of mind, right? So I can imagine what it means to be you, and that means I am conscious to some level.
No. See, as soon as you get into theory of mind, you're already in thoughts, and that's different from experience.
Okay.
This would be like the experience of the theory of mind. You have to, you always, like, experience is this thing that is not, this gets back to something that doesn't have content in itself. You experience stuff. This is dualism. Now, so if it's elective, just either believe in consciousness or not, who cares? But there's, you can tell, if it's true that you can tell whether somebody's conscious only if they're a professional philosopher, it's also true that whether they believe in consciousness only matters if they're a technologist. Okay. If you don't believe in consciousness, or if you believe that you can reproduce or recreate or conquer consciousness with AI algorithms or something like that, you design technology differently. You design for people differently. So you start to say, oh, I'm going to make my computer thing your friend instead of your tool. I'm going to make a creature instead of a tool, is the way we say it sometimes. And when you do that, you change people, you change society, you change the structure of power and money, because, of course, it flows to whoever operates that creature. So it has political and economic implications. So it really starts to matter if you're a technologist. And so I think technologists, like, for anybody else, I really don't care what they believe. They should find themselves. But for technologists, they really should believe in consciousness as this mysterious, special thing. Like, as I said before, because otherwise you don't know who your beneficiary is. And the funny thing about consciousness is that you can believe in it without believing in it precisely. In fact, that's the only way you can believe in it. Like, somebody might say, well, is the consciousness only somewhere in your brain, or is it like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't. I really don't.
Some people say it's like subsumes the entire universe and is the...
It could subsume the entire universe. If you say that everything's a little conscious, you end up with a combinatorial problem, which is the Boltzmann problem, that you have to have a different consciousness for each combination of things, and it seems a little unwieldy, but, you know, who knows? But once again, you really have to believe that people are special to be a technologist, or you're screwed. You're absurd. You've undone yourself. So I guess it's not just consciousness, but specialness in consciousness that you really have to find in people. And that's purely a matter of faith. Like, I can't prove that to you. I can just say that if you don't have it, you're going to suck as a technologist.
Is that why like tech people think their tech is so special that it must have consciousness? Or?
Yeah, that's right. What happens is people are like, oh, people don't have magic dust. We are continuing the Copernican revolution. We're not special, but our computer here is special. The magic dust goes over here. And by the way, it's expensive. You got to buy that specialness. So like getting rid of the magic dust is not what actually happens. It just gets transferred to your product instead of other people. And so, you really, really, really need to have it. You need to have that magic dust. You need to have that specialness in order to not be ridiculous. And, it's just the price we pay. The price we pay to be good technologists is we have to get all gooey and spiritual. What a fucking drag. But here, we're stuck with it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
We just got to do it. It's an obligation, I guess.
I'm enjoying it at this moment. Okay, so theory of mind. Why is AI not conscious? Eliezer Yudkowsky.
Yeah, I know who that is. But the question of what is not the important question because we don't know. It's a matter of faith. There's no absolute. You want to believe AI is conscious? It's a belief. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I'm not the religion police. But if you're going to be a technologist, if you're going to design stuff, you got to believe people are special in order to not be insane.
I think it does matter if tech people think AI is conscious because it might dictate their future actions. Like
exactly
why I brought up Eliezer is because he is a pretty big doomer, which surprisingly a little bit because he's in a crowd that sometimes includes people who are like not afraid or who are not afraid of the end of the world, but he is one of the most afraid of the world people I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's right.
And he said, okay, so AI doesn't have to become conscious. What really has to happen is that 50% plus one of people in the universe need to think that it's conscious because that's the theory of mind answer to why something is conscious. And you kind of alluded to it earlier.
Yeah,
like
sure.
if I can convince you that I'm conscious.
I would kind of agree with that. I mean, I think.
So it doesn't matter if the lights are on inside the AI. It's just if we believe they are, then it is.
No,
so.
Absolutely. It's so I feel like I might be repeating myself for some of the people who watch this podcast because this is a thing I say a lot. But the Turing Test, which is what he's alluding to, that if people believe in it, it's what makes it real. It's the only test we have. So in the Turing Test, there's a computer and a guy. They're each trying to fool a judge to say, no, I'm the real person. No, I'm the real person. And they used to pass little slips of paper in the original one, but now, of course, we would just text or do TikToks or something. And then so the idea is that if the judge can't tell the difference, then you ought to grant the computer whatever status he'd grant the person. But here's the thing. The test only measures the differential. So the test doesn't distinguish whether the computer got smarter or a person got stupider. It would be exactly the same, right? So if the people change themselves to make the computer seem smart, that counts as passing the test. And do people make themselves stupid to make computers seem smart? I present to you TikTok. I present crypto. I mean, we do it like crazy. We do mass waves of astonishing stupidity to make computers look. So, but here's the thing though. In the Turing test, there's two people and one computer. So there's a 2/3 chance that a person got stupider rather than the computer getting smarter. And I found that to be a good rule of thumb. Anytime there's supposed to be a computer getting smart, there's a 2/3 chance somebody became an idiot. And once again, crypto, social media.
Yeah, man.
All right. Okay.
I got a new coin to sell you.
Oh, I know. It's so. I find it so frustrating when I'm in like a room of people who can't afford it and they all bought crypto thinking it's going to be their ticket to affluence. And I mean, oh my God, like, why do we do that to people? Mm-hmm. Why do we do it to them? Why? Anyway, so the thing is, could AI destroy the world? Well, belief in AI can destroy the world because if you design the system as if it's a creature, then you're not taking responsibility for it. You're not operating it. And yeah, I mean, if you have a machine that's running the world and you let it run wild, it might destroy you and destroy the world. I mean, that's to me, that's not a remarkable claim. So the doomers are factually well within reason, but the way to fix doomerism is to stop believing in AI. And then that changes the design philosophy. Now, I've been over this with people. Oh my God, I go back and forth with people about it. There's this problem. There's a thing in tech culture that there's a grandiosity. Like, we are the smart kids. We're so smart. We're Nobel Prize material. And a lot of it is very infantile to me because I feel it in myself. I'm not speaking as an observer. I'm speaking as someone who's an example. We want to please our mothers. We want to please girls. We want to be we're going to transform reality. We're Einstein, over and over again. There's this thing that happens in our brains. And so there's a grandiosity. And doomerism is partially driven by that grandiosity. This thing I made is so incredibly important. It could destroy the world, and there is this grandiose, machine working behind the scenes that's driving that. And so sometimes if you try to talk to people about solutions, say, well, if we thought about it a little differently, it wouldn't be so dangerous. You're undermining their own self-worth, even as you try to save the world. And even as they're on the surface actually aligned with you and also wanting to save the world. So doomerism is a really funny thing that way. It's hard to talk through the grandiosity of doomerism.
Yeah, so there's grandiosity on the left if you go towards it's going to kill us all. There's grandiosity on the right if it's going to save us all. Then be our savior, AI. Down the middle.
Down the middle.
Go right down the middle.
I always used to say when people in the old days would ask me all these questions about spirituality like you are now, I always used to say that there's this tightrope. You fall off one side and you're lost in reductionism. And if you fall on the other side, you're lost in superstition. And right in between is where you find something that's at least actionable and not completely bonkers.
The middle way, if you will.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Okay, Mr. Buddhist. That's fine.
So that actually kind of brings up, like, the grandiosity part brings up, we're moving towards AI and music. We're almost there. But I think before we get there, we have to talk about money. Yeah, because, and I think we should do this through the lens of a musician, because this is what you do in your book. Who Owns the Future, which is a great book, and that is the reason we were here today to some extent, because I read it 10 years ago, and I wanted to ask you about it.
Okay.
And how it updates for today, because also you had some ideas in the middle. But through the lens of musicians, first off, what is the premise of the book as it relates to, like, royalties, endless royalties, micropayments? How does it work economically?
We're coming to a crossroads where we have to decide how to support each other, how to value each other. The mainstream in the tech world is a belief that most people will be worthless economically because the AI programs and the robots will be better at everything. And so people will just sit around. And the main issue is to keep the robots from just destroying the people in the course of them living their superior lives, and B, why do people deserve to get support? Are they part of any market system or anything, or do they just get supported, like everybody's on welfare or something? And so most people fall into that idea. And so the idea is that everybody gets universal basic income.
Who pays for the universal basic income? That part always misses me.
So the idea is that you have no economic value. And in fact, I was just at I keynoted this conference on crypto meets AI, which was a pretty wild conference. And a lot of the speakers took the premise that they were working with is that the only thing that can possibly be scarce or valuable once AI improves everything and creates superabundance in all ways for everything, which is going to happen really, really, really soon, like a few years or something, is crypto. So anything you're doing now, other than buying crypto is a waste of time. If you're educating yourself, if you're doing a startup, even a tech startup, whatever you're doing.
I thought it was like if you're doing anything else other than buying GPUs, you're wasting your money.
No, but the super robots will be able to calculate the proteins that will make weeds grow CPUs that will automatically self-connect. I don't know, like the whole thing, all of reality will be transformed into something that's absolutely abundant.
Got it.
So, of course, if you're in crypto, you think the only thing that matters is crypto. It's a very natural human way to think, right? Now, this way of thinking, I think, is naive. And a great number of my colleagues and friends very much believe it and think that way. I mean, it's a very common idea. One issue with it is whoever's that hub that's distributing these things is going to be a very tempting target for takeover by bad actors. The way I often put this is you start with Bolsheviks, then you get Stalinists. And like, it's just going to happen. All right. Just like, that's the way the world works.
It's happening.
And then the other thing is that economics is always based on differentials, if it's anything. So if everybody gets the same income, except for the few people, of whom I'd be one, I guess, who'd be close to the computers at the center, and there's hyper wealthy, not that I am, but I'm just saying, like, there would be some class of people who would end up close to the computers and do very well. Everybody else would be leveled out. And under that circumstance, it's a very weird thing. It means it's powerful people versus powerless people. And what do you think's going to happen?
Bad things.
And so right now, those who are sometimes called the oligarchs, or I think Steve Bannon calls them the broligarchs or whatever, like your Musk and Bezos and whatever, they're the ones who are close to the biggest computers. That because computer networks, because of network effects, tend to concentrate wealth and influence at the center with less friction than traditional network effects. And so you have this thing happening very quick. Anyway.
You call this a Siren server. So these
they were called Siren Servers in Who Owns the Future. That's correct.
Yeah. So all power sort of like goes toward people who have the biggest computer, basically.
Yeah. And I should mention some of the people who are those oligarchs now have mentioned, wow, your book was great. It really helped me achieve what I've achieved. We're like, wait, no, that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point.
That was not the point.
Anyway, so I don't think this idea of universal basic income is a stable solution. They do, but I think it's incorrect. So the alternative that I think is better is you actually get paid for creative data. And so the whole tech world was very opposed to this. Like, music has to be free, but music was never free. What actually happened is we were just subsidizing Google. The whole pirate movement for file sharing was financed by Google behind the scenes, in Europe anyway, the pirate parties. And so we're just creating this new hyper wealthy thing that's more centralized than the one that we hate so much, was like record labels, which tried their best to be evil. Honestly, they started off as a money laundering scheme, and it's not like they were angelic, but hypothetically, with a digital network, you could, for the first time in human history, approximate a system where people do get rewarded for creative engagement in different ways. And this was the original motive for the very first digital network architecture, which is Ted Nelson, 1960, Xanadu, which is the start of everything. And he called it hypertext, which is the HT and HTML that we still know in the web. And the idea is that everybody would, they would pay each other for creative engagement, and there would be inherited payments where if you incorporate somebody's thing into a new thing, there would be trickling sub-royalties going back, and the whole thing would become a new kind of market system. In the case of AI, that would mean that if you contribute example data that an AI uses in generating a picture for somebody, you'd get a little royalty when they use your data, and you'd have to have a way of tracing it, which doesn't currently exist, but I think it
could exist.
And the reason to want that, some people think it sounds really encumbering, and why would you want this big complicated thing? And the reason why is it's a better expression of optimism. So one of the issues with the universal basic income idea is there's this idea that we today, our generation, are grandiose, very special, very, very brilliant, very, 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 very accomplished generation of young tech men will come up with the AI for all eternity, and nobody else will ever need to be creative again. We're the omega for humanity. We're the smartest ones that ever need to be. And after that, everybody will just be taken care of by our brilliance for eternity. All right. So the problem with that is that it underestimates how wild and creative people might be in the future given a chance. Like, what if in the future there are an ever-expanding, exploding variety of crazy things people want to do? Maybe people want to merge with plants, and then as this weird merge thing, fly through space and do, I don't know. I mean, like, whatever it is, whatever science fiction has done, it's not as weird as what people might come up with. And presumably there'll be AI tools to help with that. And those AI tools will have been trained on pioneer communities who get into this weird stuff that was totally unpredictable and bizarre. And so what you can imagine this ever expanding civilization where there are cultures of creators instead of populations who just become dependent. So it's a question, do you have new creative populations or new dependent populations? You can get either depending on your philosophy of AI. But if you're optimistic and you think that there'll be enough options for new kinds of creativity, that there'll be enough niches for new creative people to sustain an economy into the future, that leap of optimism is expressed by what we call the data dignity idea, the idea of all this data being valued and creating a new kind of hypermarket system.
Yeah.
If you don't have that optimism and you think people will just sit there and be taken care of and there's no creativity in the future and it's just done, well, then you do the universal basic income, which is the static solution.
So we need a dynamic solution. So
I choose optimism. That means data dignity. Now, an actual solution in the future would probably be some kind of hybrid, like maybe there's universal basic income because not everybody's a creative genius.
Yeah, that was my question. Like
that's fine.
If you're contributing to this network, like it's kind of like you have to contribute to the network to get the derivatives. So like what it is, so like you're saying, like, so anytime you walk down the street, that's like a piece of data that goes to Google Maps that says it's like slightly more proper.
And that becomes kind of demeaning in its own way because it's too automatic and that is encumbering. So look, I think, and you might want to be in a period of your life where you're not creative. Maybe you just and that's fine. Like, I think what'll happen is some hybrid.
Because everybody has to want to be a TikTok creator to get their royalties.
There's a difference here because with TikTok sets the game and the people who get royalties are the ones who promote TikTok itself. So it's only one game, which is promoting the central hub. In reality, there should be a bunch of games that are not like that are self-defined. And in that world, there can be an ever larger variety of people who are creative rather than everything concentrating on this typical toddler-like, social media personality that's overtaken people like Trump and Musk at this point. Instead of everybody turning into one thing, there's this gigantic expansion. And so see, this is the crucial thing. If everybody is doing this under one hub to one purpose, which is selling influence and attention for the greater glory of the hub, then you end up with this horrible lack of variety and just boring repetition, and also a very, very tiny number of winners. So there's everybody thinks they're on the verge, but there's just this little peak of network effect or a Pareto peak of people who actually get by on it, but they're just almost like being paid to fool everybody else to have hope.
Influencers up there.
Yeah, it's like the crypto thing. Like there are few winners and then everybody else loses.
Yeah.
And so
it's a Ponzi scheme, I think is what it's called.
Ponzi is what we call that. Yes.
Yeah.
And so to really be optimistic, you have to believe that there's enough potential to at least open up this idea of an ever-expanding creative economy that's unpredictable for those who wish to participate in it. I agree with you. It would be demeaning and kind of deadening to demand that everyone live that way.
Or if I just want to go like live in a cave somewhere and not share anything with anybody.
Yeah, you should be able to be boring and supported in some future with if there's an abundant future. But the thing that gets me is that we already have an abundant present. Like compared to the past, we have so much capability now and so much wealth. Why is there anybody hungry in the world right now? Why? I mean, it's ridiculous. Like if we can create, centibillionaires and we can do all this, like why can't we just like feed people? Now the truth is we have fed people a lot. Like there is a lowering rate of abject poverty and hunger in recent decades. It actually is going down. It's actually in the right direction. But why is there any now? So I don't know how much abundance is needed to really get to the point where even the worst off people are basically okay. I'm not sure if people left to their own devices are quite willing to let that happen, actually.
Yeah. I have two more questions on this before we get to AI and music.
Okay.
I think the thing that stuck with me was this idea of levees in the great flows of data that would stop things that would protect people. And also you sort of used this word kind of when you made this point. One of the main points you talked about this like language of like, this is like going to be barter like on steroids. Like, why do we have to bring money into this? And so you said it's going to be like barter on, you didn't say that, but you said it's going to be like the biggest bartering system ever. But like, I go back to David Graeber, who I think you also quote in this book, who says that there was no such thing as barter ever.
Yeah. So, oh God, so many things to say here. One thing is, David was a dear friend, and of course he passed away and we miss him, but we had a little joke. So my autobiography is called The Dawn of the New Everything. And then he and his writing partner wrote a book called The Dawn of Everything.
Which is a great book.
Yeah, it's a cool book. And a kind of, in a funny way, companion books if you read them in a certain way. Anyway, this question of whether the future has money or not is in a way not that important.
Uh-huh.
And that's a strange thing. If you look at the prospectus for OpenAI, it says to investors, after the AI, it's like after the revolution in Moscow back in the day, after the AI, we don't even know if money will exist or what role it'll have. So if you're putting in money, it might mean nothing. There might be no money coming out because there might be no money. I don't really care if there's money in the future. A lot of people are very exercised about that because they're caught up in the drama of left versus right, which, how important should money be? I don't really care. Like if there's money, fine. And if there's not, fine. I think it might work either way.
Mm-hmm.
And
I guess I was more wondering if there's debt.
So in the book, I advocate for a new type of finance that would be more sophisticated. And in fact, what I was suggesting is new digital currencies that would have contracts built in. Now, those didn't exist because the book was written before even blockchain existed. But now, especially in the Ether ecosystem, we can make currencies with contracts built in. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we have to great effect. And in fact, the whole crypto thing has so far not led to productivity for humankind in any appreciable way. Mm-hmm. And I want to believe that the reason for that is that the Ponzi temptation is too great to give enough space to a productive version of it. This is an emerging and complicated topic because now we're dealing with reality and not, it's much easier to speculate, believe me. Like now we're trying to analyze what's really going on.
Well, you tried after that, you had this thing called the mediator of individual data, the MID.
The MID, yeah.
They would try to meet these things out in a way that would be...
So that idea has some traction and that there's a bunch of, by a bunch, I mean thousands of organizations trying to do MIDs in one version or another now.
What is a MID?
Okay, so here's what a MID, here's the idea is that if you have a society of individual against individual, of just a sea of individuals fighting each other, what'll happen is that only a tiny number will emerge as winners, and most people will have only very contingent moments of victory before they're dragged down again. So a sea of people fighting people as individuals only is to the benefit of those who are those few individuals who've done very, very well. So you need to have some kind of cooperation. You need to have some way that people can share. And so the idea of the MID, and it has many other names at this point, that was a starting name. That was the name that Glenn Weil and I used.
What are some other names? In
an article. There's a whole world of things called federated, this and that's an extension of that idea. There's this whole thing now, these
people
different...
are starting to do this.
There's organizations trying to facilitate it.
It's like a union for data people.
They're sometimes called data unions. They're sometimes called, in fact, there's laws anticipating these in various places around the world, even a nascent one in California of all places. I'll try to make this concrete. Let's suppose you're a podcaster. Now, there are a few problems that you have. One is that there's thousands of you out there competing for attention. Only a small number get the most and rise high. Let's say if it's in somebody else's platform, it might be YouTube, for instance, as one example. So Rick Beato maybe gets up there or something as a music educator, there are enough people who are doing well in a sense, but there's many, 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 many who are just on the verge and never quite get there. Another problem is that in order to really do it, you're on the hamster wheel. You have to keep on turning stuff out, sometimes daily, it's just hard,
You're lucky if it's daily.
Yeah. Sometimes for TikTokers, it's multiple times a day.
Yeah.
So, and then the other problem is that even if you build up a lot of success, it might not be sticky, as we say. You could lose it pretty easily. There's nothing really substantial there. Now, imagine the following situation. What if you formed an organization with 10 or maybe 100 other people? And here's how this works. You're going to cooperate together in that you're all going to brand yourselves collectively, like as if you were a band or a magazine or a sports club or something. You're creating this thing, and that's the mid. And for some traditional thinkers, the same idea was called a societal institution. And if you want to read about those, read de Tocqueville or Hannah Arendt are two good ones on that. All right, so now you have this. What do you get from working with these people? Well, one thing you get is you hedge against randomness. So part of what makes one startup win when the others lose, and part of what makes one social media artist win when the others lose, is random. Nobody who's a winner wants to believe it. But I've been in this game a while. It's not wholly. It's like in between. Skill's real, but so is luck. And I think 50-50 is a reasonable guess at the usual ratio. And you would say, well, what about this person who's been successful at 3 different things? Success builds on success. So that's not really a fair comparison.
Yeah.
Once you have one successful company, it's easier to have another. You know, at any rate, had there been no PayPal, it would have been very hard to start a SpaceX, really, you know?
Yeah.
Like you have to, like success builds on success. And so the easier one might get you into the harder one. Okay, so, but not that there isn't skill there, which I believe there really is in that example. All right, so let's say you have, let's say a mid of 100 people. There's a chance that 3 of them will do well generally in your system, or maybe it's 27. I don't know. It depends on what the environment is. So what you do is you say, we don't know which of us are doing well, but some of us are. We're going to self-govern. We're going to only allow people in that the existing people think are a pretty good bet. And we're also not going to flatten it out. We're not going to say that everybody will make the same. It'll be a fusion. Like what we're going to say is everybody hits a baseline. They can still be ejected if they just start to become lazy or something, but everybody hits a baseline, and those who do well still benefit, but not quite as well as if it had happened randomly. But on the other hand, they have a hedge against failure. So if you like, it's a little like a hedge fund for creatives in a way, but then there's more. We commit to the overall organization keeping up a clip of posting, but each individual then is relieved from the hamster wheel, and they can trade off and whatnot, and they can work things out. Here's another thing. This is more subtle. In the old days, when you would go into a bookstore or a record store, how many different books or records could there be in such that you could really use the store and browse and get somewhere? Assuming it's reasonably organized and well run. Well, the answer was tens of thousands.
Yeah.
I used to go into book and record stores with tens of thousands of things, not a problem. And I got to know them, and it was a wonderful experience. Now, the problem is that on the internet, when there's, let's say, millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of options, you don't have that experience anymore. It's overwhelming. So you rely on somebody else's algorithm to feed you stuff, right? And so there's a loss of power that goes with the scale of the choices, because choice is expensive. Choice costs. All right. Now, what if the whole world is organized into these mids? Let's just say the average mid side is 100 for the sake of argument. Now you've cut down the number of things to keep track of by 100. So that's kind of interesting. If you can chop it down and just ignore things that really are trivial and are obviously useless or just synthetic or not important, could you get down to 50,000 or 100,000 things that you could really browse instead of needing a recommendation algorithm?
Yeah.
Maybe in some virtual space so that it reproduces the old experience of browsing in a bookstore for those who want that. I'm sure there are many other ways. Well, see, I think you can. I think by organizing people into mids, you can reduce the cost of choice enough to at least give human intention more of a chance instead of algorithmic feed and guidance. That's an extremely important point.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know the exact balance of how big a mid can be and how big they need to be to reduce, like there's a lot of interesting numbers here to sort out, but I believe there's a solution space in there where we can reduce the need for recommendation algorithms.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like a DAO with a CBA. It's like maybe it's a distributed autonomous organization doing a collective bargaining agreement with tech companies for.
Sure.
Like, it's like, I hear like Woody Guthrie being like, there's power in a union.
In the future, 3-letter acronyms might be banned.
Okay, all
that
right.
might be the only restriction on speech that I would support. But anyway, yeah.
It also harkens to another kind of thing, and I want to get to this, the last thing, AI and music, because I want to talk about the two things, the downsides and the upsides of AI and music. I think they're both. But to start with the downsides, I think taking musicians is a great example, because musicians once had a union that bargained. You just mentioned it earlier in the interview. I think that bargained for these things, these mechanical rights, basically these derivatives, or not derivatives, residuals. And what you're kind of arguing for is a like ambient residuals society as it relates to creativity.
Yeah, if you like, sure.
So can you tell me a little bit about, let's talk about AI and music, what it's doing to music. What are the downsides as it relates to finding music, not so much making music yet, but finding music, compensating artists. Spotify has these things, this stuff called perfect fit content, which is like music that they make, don't have an artist make, and they fill their playlist with this like AI made music or very cheaply made artist music.
I hope there will be a reaction against it, and it'll stop being motivated economically or in any other way. I don't think that'll happen instantly.
The musicians are a good example of all this, because like sort of this whole thing that we've been experiencing since data became a thing is that they kind of come for the creatives and the like writers and the lawyers, but somehow they don't ever lose their job. But like they come for the creatives first, and musicians are creative. And I'm wondering, like, in your system, like, what are the downsides of AI and machine learning as it relates to musicians?
Let's look at the world from just before the latest AI boom. So a music hub like Spotify has millions of artists listed, because there's very low friction to listing yourself as an artist, and there's very low friction to producing stuff. And so that has the effect of putting intense competitive pressure on everybody on it, which then drives down the money the average person can make, so that very, very tiny numbers of people experience the network effect peak. And so it's a bit of a despondent and kind of dark situation. And in that context, here I think the mid idea actually might be helpful. So the thing about a mid is that if a mid develops a reputation, it's a reputation that's shared by all the people in it. So 100 people can share a reputation at once. And that's more efficient. Like building up a reputation as an individual now is a lot of work and also a lot of luck. Let's admit it. So there's skill and there's luck and there's a lot of work.
But maybe, like, are you saying that musicians all around the world, like, could be in some musician mid?
In these, well, that's what, I mean, musicians are used to being in groups. They're called bands or orchestras or whatever. So, and yes, we'll all complain about each other and the stupid drummer and everything. We're going to do that. We're musicians. We bitch. Okay. But the thing is, if there's a group of 100 people who build a reputation, what it does is it creates a smaller number of bigger things for people to pay attention to. So it's not so much of a sea that's just absolutely unnavigable, and you're not just playing to the algorithm anymore. Because if you have this giant smooth distribution of individuals fighting, then the success is limited to a very tiny number at the peak, and whatever reward there is very small for almost everybody else. And so all that's left is to reduce costs as much to maybe have that reward at scale be something. And so you end up with AI musicians. And so the economics of it are very clear. Now, do people care whether their music comes from an AI or a real musician? I mean,
I do.
I think people do. I mean, I think people care about the musician as long as they have a chance to know. But when you're listening to a Spotify feed, you don't even know who the musician is. And so, once again, Turing Test, humans get stupider to make AI look smart 2/3 of the time. So 2/3 of the time, people will lower their musical standards to make the AI music seem good, given a stupidly designed system, which would be one that's a giant flat sea of people competing with each other for the benefit and greater glory of a central hub.
Speaking of that, why does AI music suck so bad?
Probably some of it's okay. I don't know.
No, man. Like,
it's all terrible.
If you go like Suno, like, you know, it's just, I think it's because like everything is is a copy of a gray copy of something good. Like, I don't even know how AI music algorithms train. I don't know how like all that stuff gets trained when it relates to music and and sounds and waveforms instead of pixels. But like whatever comes out of it is like music. But it's like every genre of music.
Well, the thing is, somebody who disagrees with you can probably design some study where they play it for a bunch of people and the people can't tell because, it's only statistics. One of the problems with the Turing test is it's too easy to pass because it's just statistics. Like, I'm pretty sure I have the skills to make some AI music thing. Not that I'd want to, that would fool you, but why? What is achieved? Like, that's the thing, is it's a stupid task. So yeah, I think people are foolable. If people will buy crypto, they'll believe that AI music is good. Like, honestly, what we need to do is not try to fool each other, but to try to increase each other's discrimination and sophistication and knowledge of one another, but unfortunately, the Turing test is such a familiar idea that a lot of AI product designs and business designs are think that fooling people is in itself an achievement. It's too easy. It should be beneath us. I think people should be embarrassed to do it.
Yeah, last question on the downsides, I feel, is like another aspect of AI that I just want to talk about is that sort of like everything feeding into something that puts out something schlocky. But like, is the system you're talking about one that can then reverse engineer every piece of what went into that schlocky AI song and pay out everybody who contributed to the LLM?
I want that reverse system to exist. There are actually some tricky math problems still to be worked out. So I believe it can be done. And in a certain narrow sense, it has been done academically, but a practical implementation and version of that doesn't exist yet, to my knowledge. So very much working on it. It's one of my priorities in my science life.
Is an equitable economic world with AI possible without that?
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think you need that. So it's really, if there's some reason why that can't be done, if it turns out we hit a mathematical wall, I don't expect that. There's no evidence that that'll be the case, but it's possible. And then we have a different conversation, and then we're in another thing, But,
the only constant is change.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what would be cool about AI music. What is going to be cool in your mind about AI music?
So I don't think AI means anything. It's a bad term, but
music that it comes out of machine learning algorithms that can create new things generatively.
The way I'd prefer to talk about it is large statistical correlative systems or something like that.
That create outputs.
I think there's some cool things to do with it. Like, for instance, I'd be interested in asking an AI to calculate which world instruments have the right notes and capabilities to play along with a particular piece or something like that. And that might sound like a poor use of AI, but it's actually, for anybody who actually has done it, it's a very hard problem. It's actually a pretty challenging one, much more than just making music with it. I've done a lot of stuff with using motion and virtuality to make music, and the thing I was talking about of being able to ask for what you want and just have the virtual world change, something like that. Like, say, I want a musical instrument that has my fingers exploring
a sea of goo.
We'll call it a quantum spin liquid, and it's here, and I'm intervening in it, and at the periphery, this thing is exciting different resonators that then we hear as audio signals. I don't know.
You sent me a video of exactly this earlier today. You sent me a video of like your first VR music performance where you're like holding this like gyroscope that you move your hand around in.
Yeah, that's right.
And it makes different chords.
I've been working towards this for many years, and there are many other examples I could send you, but that one's kind of precious because it's from the 80s. Although the video I sent you might be early 90s. But yeah, so that's one where I have musical instruments inside virtual reality and I play them as a performance. And I think it holds up. I don't know. It's up to other people.
I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did. It's it's early. The computer to render that in real time was unique and cost a couple $1 million. So
wow.
it's hard to understand how avant-garde and ahead of the curve that thing was at the time. Also at that time, I could show it to somebody and even put them in the headset and explain it, and they could not understand. It was just like so unfamiliar and so radical, people could not follow it.
Wow.
But at any rate, yeah, so I play different instruments, and there's this thing that I turn, and it creates internal collisions that form harmonies and rhythms. And if you jerk it, it creates this kind of jerky, crazy 20th century thing. And then if you do it slowly, it makes this very slow and pleasant kind of new agey thing. And you find in between spaces. And so it's a high level instrument, I guess. But that was all done with the kinds of algorithms that we had back then at the level of computation we had back then. And now that we can do these massive, billion element AI systems, I'll use the term. Okay, whatever. Oh, God. But anyway, these really big models. I mean, actually, for this type of thing, they might be overkill. I don't know if we really need them for this, but the big models are really great for protein folding and natural language and a few other things like that. Mm-hmm. I just think if an AI can synthesize music that sounds like your music's not creative enough and something's gone wrong, is what I'd say. Something's like very wrong. And I've been feeling like pop music's been kind of self-similar and boring to an unacceptable degree for a while. And then people say, oh, well, you're just getting old and you don't appreciate it. Like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's actually real. But anyway, I don't know.
We're going to find out like in 10 years that there was like a Kurt Cobain of like AI music that we didn't hear about or something. I think that's the only probable outcome, I think.
Well, I have to say every once in a while I hear something and I think, wow, that's incredible. And then I can't find out who it was because it was on somebody else's stream and they didn't keep track. And I don't, it's crazy right now. We've created mass anonymity out of mass surveillance.
Yeah.
And it's stupid. We have to do better.
I have one that I think it would be kind of cool. I play trombone, but not very well. I used to play like a long time ago, but I've been trying to pick it up again lately, but I'm not good enough that I could play with that I could like go with the band all the time. Like I can play pretty well. But like, what if I could make a jazz band that would respond to me playing trombone in real time?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who've tried to do that. And I have sort of mixed feelings. Like, I think,
but I'm just sitting at home, I can't get a band together every time and I just want to play.
This question goes back to the origins of the internet. Like I remember having this conversation in the 80s where people would say, well, I would like to just have a synthetic band that plays along with me. And of course, I totally get how cool that would be. But on the other hand, if we have the internet, why can't I just get online and instantly find real people who are a match who happen to want it too from all the billions of people in the world? You really can't find a spontaneous band?
Because if there is one thing about you, like that ties everything that you do together, is that you want technology to connect people.
Yeah, well, people are real and technology isn't. Like to me, technology is just a bullshit fantasy. It's this thing we attribute a certain story to things, and if there's practical benefit, like if it cures a disease, of course that's amazing, and that's the main reason to do it. But anything other than that, any sense of beneficiary that's more aesthetic or something, it's just entirely made up by us, right? And so I really don't believe technology is best thought of as being real at all. I think we should think of it as our fantasy applied to stuff we make. What's real is people. And so, yeah, I would always want to make it human-centered. And right now, there are tools where you can find people and play with them. There's this problem of the delay in playing with people who are in remote locations. And it's not great, honestly. So it does limit it. But even nearby people, I mean, the Bay Area has 9 million people or something. Really seriously, you can't get online, and if it was really designed that way, find a few other people to play with who are just happen to at this moment want to, who have the right instruments. Like, is that really not doable? So it's never been done because there's not a great economic model for it. But in a data dignity economy, there would be a model to motivate that thing to come about. And it certainly seems technically feasible.
This is an invitation to all the cool kids out there to go outside and find themselves a band to play with.
Yeah. And I think it's great to play in a band. Believe me, there will be frustrations. When people have to cooperate, it's often really hard. It's like if you have a relationship with somebody, whether it's romantic or musical, there are going to be frustrations. And I guess if I'm supposed to be talking to the cool kids out there, I would say, obviously, if it's just absolutely miserable, then leave that situation, whatever it is. But the thing is, if it's only partially miserable, like stick with it a bit, see where it goes. Since you have been bringing up all these Buddhist and spiritual things, there's a great Leonard Cohen trope, which is, when you go into a monastery. Oh, cool kids! Leonard Cohen's a singer-songwriter.
But also then after
Hallelujah.
that, after that became kind of like a spiritual recluse, like meditator person.
But what he says is, the real benefit of going into a monastery is that you're in misery rubbing up against the other monks, and everybody's horrible. But then what happens is over time you become like smooth rocks. Like by rubbing against each other, you become lapidary and you become gems. And so, I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I think engaging with the difficulty of other humans ultimately is really worthwhile. In the moment, it feels stupid and you'd rather have an AI. And that's a problem. But I would just say, like, try to keep your head in the bigger picture and don't just, if you're thinking too much in the short term, like what will be convenient and comfortable for me today, you're ultimately being manipulated by somebody else. There's no exception to that.
Yeah. Feel the real kids.
Yeah.
Do you know about Chekhov's gun?
Chekhov's gun is an incredibly familiar thing that I know, but I can't recall it right now.
It means if a gun appears in the first act, then in the third act it must fire.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So what?
That's right.
So when you walked into our studio today, you brought an instrument, and that was the first act. So I'm wondering if in the third act you could play us off.
I'd be very pleased to. So this is called a can. It's from Laos. There's so many things about the can that you can talk about. I'm just checking. That can get damaged in transit. They're too fragile. These are ancient. I often tell a rap about how this is the origin of computation, which is neither strictly true or false, but it's one story that's as good as many others. And ancient Silk Route, these versions of this are traded across. Ancient Greeks see them, ancient Romans see it, copy it, turn into a giant steam-driven thing in the Colosseum called the hydraulis that accompanies the gore. Evolves into the pipe organ, but separately evolves into the harpsichord and piano and so on, keyboards. Early on, there's the hydraulis version of this is so big that it can't be operated by hand anymore, and there are these planks, which is where keyboards come from ultimately. And the slave boys couldn't coordinate well, so they created these cross planks to coordinate them, and that is the origin of automation in music. This sort of thing of automating groups of notes together continued all the way through, especially on the string branch of descendants from it, which go way, way back, and there's whole crazy world of that. But at any rate, by the time you get to around Mozart's time, there is a player piano with a paper roll that can improvise a little bit. It's a non-deterministic one, and Mozart was fascinated with adding randomness to music. That same paper mechanism then inspired automated loom machines like the Jacquard loom. So that turned into the Jacquard loom, which then inspired Babbage to try to make a general purpose calculator, and the first programmer, Ada, of course. And then that inspired Turing and von Neumann to codify computing.
So what's in your hand is the first AI.
This is the first digital number. So you could argue for the abacus, but this is the oldest object that has rows of similar objects that are either on or off in fixed position. So this is a 16-bit number, and it goes back thousands of years.
And what does 16 bits sound like?
Well, this version sounds better than what we can do with them lately, I think. Anyway, here we go.
Well, thank you, Jaron. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Futurology is a Studio B and Waveland production with distribution from Realm. Our executive producers are Nicholas Bergruin, Nathan Gardells, Dawn Nakagawa, Nils Gilman, and Jason Hoke. Futurology is produced by Grant Slater, Alex Gardells, and Natalia Ramos. Our associate producer is Alyssa Mardini. Futurology's theme music was composed by Marcus Bagala. The show is mixed and mastered by Aaron Bastinelli. Special thanks to Heather Mason, Olivia De Rienzo, Carly Migliori, and Nick Goddard.